All right, can you guys hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we're just gonna get started now, man. I've just accepted the fact that the Twitter algorithm is completely broken, so it's gonna be a pretty small space today. If anyone wants to join, feel free to come on up. So, hey, man, welcome to another edition of Crypto World Radio. For joining us, my name's Awabi. I host these spaces every day, and feel free to check out our pinned tweet and our sponsor BangX, and also our free Discord. So with that being said, we're just going to talk some shop with Matt and Greg Colt, good friends of the show. I always love speaking with them. And one thing that Matt says is always letting the data dictate. And so if there's any three words that I hate more than FTX, it's CPI, right? But unfortunately, that's just the world that we live in, right? But hopefully, Matt, this is like the complacency shoulder of CPI. Kind of like you can think of 2022 as like the 2021 bull market, right? And then 2022 is like the little complacency shoulder to 48, 49K before it just goes down only. And ultimately, man, I'm in the camp that CPI goes to 2 to 3% by the end of the year. And the print was 6.4. I didn't really care if it was a miss because a few weeks ago, if you remember, Matt, it was actually forecasted that CPI was going to come in at 6.4.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden they changed to 6.2. And so when the print came on, I'm like, well, at least it's still a decline month over month, you know? And yeah, did a little play shortly after CPI, and turned out well. And I'm just gonna follow what you said, something along the lines of it was at the start of the year, Matt. You put out a tweet, and I said this is probably the most important tweet of the entire year, to be honest. And you had said that the 2022 Bears are probably going to make the same mistake that the 2021 Bulls did in 2022, and not letting the data dictate. And it's kind of like they're fighting their bias, you know. So it's kind of like in 2022, like, oh, just you wait and see. Oh, we're gonna pump. Oh, we're gonna pump. Just you wait. The Fed's not gonna raise rates now it's like, oh man, just wait until this. Just wait until that. You know, first it was, oh man, wait until Q4 earnings. Oh man, wait until tech earnings. And it's like, geez, man, sounds like a bunch of cope to me. Sounds like a bunch of cope. And it's honestly great, man. It's honestly great. So let's get started, bro. Matt, what's going on, brother?
Oh, not much. I'm not often right, but when I am right, I want to bet big. And yeah, you said it well. I think the tweet was something like the 2022 Bears are making the same mistake as the 2021 Bulls. And what I meant by that is, in 2022, we saw inflation getting worse month after month after month, and Jay Powell and the Fed and other central banks around the world starting to tighten more and more and more. And we all know what they did: 25 basis points, then 50 basis points, then back to back 75 basis points. Like they were just cranking fastest ever rate hikes in U.S. modern history. Um, but that only came to a point. And as soon as we saw that, hey, look, summer and fall CPI inflation is actually looks like it peaked and now is even cooling off month after month. And we kept looking at unemployment and U.S. job rates and jobless claims, and it was rock steady. Call it 3.5-ish% U.S. U.S. unemployment quarter after quarter, month after month. Then, I mean, I don't want to call it, but J Powell is getting what he wants. He's getting that softish landing over time. And as long as those two things hold, cooling CPI and job rates holding steady, then the bottom's in. The bottom's in. And so that's why late last summer in the fall, um, myself, oh, sorry, the dog, myself and some others, we were just trying to buy as close to 18K and 17K as we could and buy all the Bitcoin we could every time it bounced down there. And no, none of us expected FTX, but that was a gift. That was an absolute, here's a golden goose of a gift. buy as much as you can under 16 and 17K, and then it didn't last long, but like that was your shot. That was your absolutely your shot. And now look at it. Now the Bears are in some serious panic because truly, if we flip 25K, then you can justify any number in the higher 20s, even busting into the 30s. But they made this mistake of, you're right, like, okay, next month we're going to see all the jobs, capitulate. Next month everyone's fired. Okay, well, not this month, but the next month after that, you wait, everyone will be fired. They'll it'll the whole bottom will fall out. And it just never happened. Hasn't happened. And we're now 8 months later, 9 months later, of CPI inflation keeps cooling off a little bit more, and jobs are holding steady. So that was basically it. And I didn't predict any of that. We talk regularly every week at least, practically every other day, and we look at all the same reports. And all we kept saying is like, you don't have to guess. Let's just see what the data says, and then see what kind of trend it's making, and act accordingly. And so, yeah, if you had started, even if you're not even a trader, if you had just turned your brain off and started DCAing Bitcoin back in, let's call it July 1st, 2022, you'd have about an average of 18.5K Bitcoin, a big old stack of Bitcoin at that average, at call it 18.5. And now, like, how happy are you right now? For over half a year, you do the hard work, you buy up a ton of Bitcoin, and now you're sitting in profit, wondering like, well, do I just, maybe I just go on vacation or something. But anyway, that's my point. Like, um, I didn't have no crystal ball. I'm no sleuth. Just letting the data dictate.
Yeah, I know you were mentioning jobs. The only jobs report that I really look at are like crypto-based ones. They could be miners, they could be exchanges. And if we look at like since 2019, right, when quote unquote crypto started like really making some moves in the internal economy, like workforces and all that, they're still up like 500, 600, 700% since then, dude. Um, and even like Binance Labs, they recently just stopped hiring, like just stopped hiring. And it's like, even if there's 10%, 20% cuts, dude, you're still up way over triple digits. Cause like, dude, the crypto economy is still strong as hell, man. It's still strong. Like these exchanges, like even Coinbase, right? Even though they only make money in a bull market, dude, they have employees from all over the world, man, all over the world. And I know more recently, I hate addressing this, man. I don't like to piggyback
Go
off
for it.
of
What's up?
the the ongoing narrative, but like the whole Paxos thing, it's sort of like
Yeah, let's talk on
FTX.
that.
Like, yeah, it's sort of like FTX. Like, all right, we get it, it's done, let's move on, right? So, like with Paxos, they're fully regulated, man. They're full NYC compliant and all that stuff. They're just kicking the can down the road. If you remember in 2018, 2019, when all these ICO projects, all they had to do was pay a fine. Like, all right, you raised money, just give us our cut, and that's it, right? If they want to fine Paxos, by all means, go ahead. And if BUSD is done printing, hey man, it's still money out there. You know what I mean? And to my knowledge, like all Binance really has to do is just find another provider. You know, and on top of that, Binance is one of the biggest facilitators in crypto in general. Like how many people in other nations use Binance as their bank account, right? They hold their stables there and all that stuff because their oh my gosh, I hate this word. Their fiat is being debased of like by the day, right? So I don't think they're going anywhere, and I think like because the market is just kind of brushing off this whole FTX thing. It's like, okay, cool. Like FTX rugged, market moves on, just like Mount Gox, right? And like I know you say let the data dictate, and there's this other individual that says the same thing. but he says let price dictate, right? And that's
Yep.
big Cheds.
Price
If you
is
walk
truth.
to
He says that
yeah,
a lot. Yep.
if you cashed out everything December 2021, right, and you just held stables, right, you just held your stables or USDT, USDC, and you came back, right, and you see the price is at 15, 16K, you would have said, wow, like I would have thought this would have gone to 11K, 12K, 10K, right? Kind of like almost the same drawdown that we had in prior cycles. But and from a drawdown perspective, the cycle was more forgiving than previous cycle, you know. Even even with something like Ethereum only went down like 82% compared to the last cycle where it went down 96%, you know. I don't even think Bitcoin even touched 80%, Matt. I think it only went down like to 76%,
Yeah, call
something
it
like that.
76, 77, depending on your exchange. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So how are you seeing the cycle play out right now? I know the last time we spoke, we were like, yeah, this is probably most likely going to be like 2015, where if you buy the yearly open, you can probably walk away, and then price by the end of the year would likely be upwards of late 20s, early 30s. And I'm still of that belief. Like, I do think we're kind of like in crab mode right now. Most people are better off walking away unless they see a good play, like something like the Blur airdrop, right? Um, so I know you had posted a chart displaying that this is starting to be reminiscent of 2015, where we might have short periods of upside volatility and then retrace a little bit, but quarter by quarter, where we still go up. We still go up in price.
Yeah. Um, I'm still having incredible deja vu to 2015, where we can fool bears and bulls alike as we go down and capitulate and retest 17 and 18K, and then that gets bought up, and then we rocket up and we go and test 24 and 25K for a possible breakout, and both can be wrong. 20 For those who might not have been around in 2015, this was right after Mount Gox capitulation. This was all sorts of crazy FUD from, at the time, the Obama administration deciding what to label, what to make of Bitcoin, and there was a lot of fear of like, what if they try to ham fist Bitcoin as a security? Anyway, long story short, there was no shortage of FUD and uncertainty in the market, just like now. Um, and We stayed in that range in 2015 for almost the whole year. Call it 250 to $500 a Bitcoin, just ping ponging back and forth. And people were losing their minds. There was as many people talking about double digit Bitcoin as others saying like, no, here we go back to 500 or 1,000. And they were all wrong, and all of their out of the money puts and calls expired worthless in 2015. So that's what I shared up at the top. Just a reminder, like, hey, if we get some bearish jobs reports, maybe some hot, a couple more hot prints of CPI inflation or whatever. Like, there's plenty of reasons in the short term where we could get rejected off of 25K spot Bitcoin price in the short term, just like we did in 2015. Doesn't mean we have to crash all the way down back to 15K Bitcoin or 12 or ridiculous 12K Bitcoins or whatever the bears are calling for. But I mean, 25K is has been incredible resistance for almost a year now, and I truly think like I almost think you need either CPI inflation to finally fall below Fed funds rate, or for JPOW to flat out get out of the way and the FOMC and Fed to no longer be an issue. That would be such a green light signal that we can finally punch a hole out of the 20Ks and get back in the 30s for Bitcoin in the short term, medium term. But until then, like, yeah, I think the goal is to buy as cheap as possible, buy as low as possible, and um, you know, from where I sit, that range is still, call it 18K to 25K. That's the range we've been in. That's the range we're still in.
Yeah, I think if we get a retest of the 2017 high, I think that'll be a blessing, man. I think that will truly, I think that'll truly be a blessing. But it's kind of like be careful what you wish for, because you might not like the package that it comes in, right? And if you remember, Matt, back in the summer last year, we were kind of saying like, what if 17K was kind of like our 64K, right? Like a quote unquote false bottom. And if we do have a retest of the lows, it'll probably just be a deviation 10% below it, right? And then, we got that, but it was with FTX and everyone was freaking out. And I remember writing down my thoughts. During these days, I like to write down my thoughts in my journal. And everybody was just like, we're going to 6K, we're going to 9K, we're going to 10K. And I'm like, I'm just going to give myself a bit more time. I'm going to give myself a bit more time. And as you know, Matt, I like dabbling in crypto a lot more. And so when it comes to quote unquote crypto, a lot of the sectors, they didn't really bottom out fully against Bitcoin until like mid December. And you were seeing the weirdest things going on in Twitter. You were seeing Sam Bagman Fried. You were seeing Sam Bagman Fried just chill on Twitter Spaces, and I'm like, wait a minute, this can't be as bad as people make it seem out to be. If he's on Twitter Spaces hanging out, and like he plays this game called League of Legends, and his profile is pretty public. It's like this guy's playing League of Legends and going on Twitter Spaces. And people are wondering if Coinbase is going to go under. What?
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
What?
Is Coin? Yeah, they're talking about Coinbase. Coinbase is next, and then DCG is next after that, and somehow they're going to take their 500,000 Bitcoin and market dump it, sell it on the market. Like people are coming up with the craziest because the thing that happened that they never thought would, FTX being in a gigantic scam and not having any Bitcoin and then capitulating. The thing that they said would never happen, could never happen, does. And now they don't know what direction's up. So
Yeah, I didn't ever think they would go under until October when he was trying to put like CZ under the bus and everything, and it's like, geez, man, you're really coming after somebody that's added like so much freedom to other people in other countries, you know,
yeah.
and it has a nice UI and all that stuff. And back in December, during that multi-week range where we only pumped like 200, $300 in a tight range, I remember going on these spaces and I was asking other Bitcoiners like, "Hey, what do you think of the situation going on with Coinbase and DCG and all that stuff?" And as I was trying to gather up as I was trying to gather up the information on the situation, I found myself being a bit paranoid. Right, I had some funds on Gemini, and I'm like, wow, am I really freaking out over Gemini right now? And I remember you were telling me like, oh, be careful of Gemini Earn, be careful of Gemini Earn, and Matt,
Oh shit! Yeah,
and
I
that was
remember that. Yeah.
yep, yep, and that was back in the, I think that was back in the space that I held in July CPI. We were like saying how this is probably going to be like the last big spike, and like that CPI report. But when I found myself doing that, I'm like, all right, this has to be like peak fear. Like if you've got myself like being like really 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 having cold feet, only putting in like little bits here, little bits there across different assets, I'm like, all right, it's time to put my head down and do some research. I think we're pretty much in the clear now. And then after that first weekly close in Bitcoin, right, that was a telltale sign. You had the yearly open with BTC down over 75%, and that first week was very telling, man. It was the first time that we saw like new inflows of money come in and pump price, and then you had some small narratives pop up in tech and all that stuff, and I started getting excited again after 2022 being such a horrible year, dude. It was nice to kind of have that fresh air and now just kind of kick back and, like, just as you said, let the data dictate. So I know you were saying something about like disinflation and all that stuff, how do you think that plays out? Well, I know we did see
Yeah,
commodities. We had a huge commodity spike last month, but now,
now that's
Matt, I'm seeing
completely,
I'm seeing
yeah,
these I'm seeing these
falling off a
prices,
cliff.
Matt, and lumber and some of these other commodities have just almost retraced their entire move. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Look at gold. Look at gold. Look at lumber. Look at copper across the board. So, what it looks like, and forgive the audience if you're not a big commodities trader or follower, but what it looks like is different conglomerates, different corporations, different companies, China included, they were bulking up and hoarding up on commodities, expecting a big demand. For whatever thesis, for when the whole world has completely reopened, China included, when I don't know, companies start to you know uh, uh, plan out their production for the back half of this decade, for the future. But anyway, the demand never showed up. They ended up with way too much commodities, way too much copper than they needed, silver, you name it, lumber. And now it looks like either we're going to crab sideways, consolidate for the next year, maybe two, maybe we get a recession, maybe not. But the thesis that, oh, it's going to be this raging 20s bull market, uh not yet. Like, maybe later, but not yet. So
what
people
if
people bought up way too much commodities, and the demand isn't here today. Maybe later, but not today.
Matt, what if this is just reminiscent of the dot-com boom? It's just like, just a little period of downturn, overall in growth, with some names outperforming, right? And maybe those quote unquote some names outperforming could be crypto, right? And maybe some stocks will lag behind.
Yeah, I
But
think you're gonna see.
I just think, Matt, I do
Yeah,
have to say this. I just think that, like, the world is just way different than 20 years ago, man. There's such an influx of jobs online. Like, this isn't 2005 where you get laid off and then it's like, oh gosh, what do I do? It's like there's a whole gig economy online, and of course you have, like, the app gig economy, right? Like DoorDash, Uber, all that sort of stuff. You can even deliver food on your bike and still make like $17 an hour and all that stuff. And it's just different, Matt. It's just a bit different. Like, um, I know one of our guys' premise. He says that if there's going to be a recession, it'll probably be a rich session where it's like the only people that are really going to get laid off in mass would be like those high tech earners, and then they would just go and do startups. And I'm still seeing a lot of startups happen within crypto, right?
I agree with I agree with the premise. I agree with his point. What we're seeing is, and we read the same headlines too. Amazon announces hiring freeze. Tesla announces hiring freeze. Even layoffs. Meta lays off 10,000. Apple hiring freeze, and then actually some layoffs too. Google as well. Like, we're seeing the biggest blue chips, quote unquote, uh, uh, best in class tech companies either stopping their hiring or trimming. Um, but those are highly sought after workers. It's not like those are untalented. Uh, TikTok videos aside, it's not like those are untalented people just sitting on free money. Other companies are snapping up those workers that they never had access to before. The energy sector, um, the quote unquote more traditional value corporations and companies. My company, like, we hire engineers, as many as we can get them. And usually we have to look overseas because US engineers come at such a high premium, and they all want to work for, a brand company that they can brag on their resume. So not only do we have to compete top dollar with Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, with everyone else, trying to attract top talent, but we don't have the name gravitas. Well, now it's nice, hey, because hey, maybe my company, we're a profitable company, and now those workers are available and they need a job because none of the other big tech companies are hiring. So now they'll look at us and they'll be willing to, hey, you know what? Google paid me 200K, but you know what? Paycheck's better than no paycheck. So I'll take 100. I'll take 150. I'll take 90, you know?
Man, and
The,
on
so
top of
yeah.
that, I want to add to your point. There's another emerging sector that's actually going pretty parabolic now, and that's with AI, right? AI has been in the works since the inception of Google, right? The more Google is used, the smarter it gets, the better the algorithm, right? So, even with some of these layoffs here, would you say that perhaps new emerging companies would actually soften that blow if it actually
Yeah,
starts? Yeah.
new emerging, but also uh, your existing companies over time get more efficient. So I'll use my company as an example. We have some of the paid subscriptions to Chat GBT. And why? For our engineers, because it's actually saving them so much time rather than searching through endless blogs and Google and various forums for this piece of code or that piece of code, or having to crowdsource, well, how do we design this or that or whatever. Chat GPT all of a sudden gives you very coherent, highly accurate lines of code based off just your prompt. If you're a decent engineer and you know what you want, you're just not sure exactly how to code it. You just need help. You're 75% of the way there. You just need the other 25%. Chat GPT saves you so much time. So much time. So maybe we can get away with, and maybe our company, even though traditionally we have a staff of, I don't know, 50 software engineers or infrastructure engineers, maybe we can get away with doing the same amount of work with only 25. Maybe we can keep our existing 50, and now we're that much more productive in knocking out projects and tasks, and making exponentially more money, able to handle exponentially more client demand. Extrapolate that across lots of different companies and sectors. The promise of AI, like I kind of roll my eyes at, like, oh, it wrote a article, or oh, it can give me a book summary. That's neat. That's nice. But what's instantly valuable is it can make a ton of highly technical, time-consuming jobs more efficient day one. That's exciting.
I agree 100%. And I think with things like exchanges, I think integrating some sort of AI would make the consumer experience a lot more, especially when it comes to custom representatives, right? Because you do have to wonder, right? If you're a customer rep, there's only so much you can do with an influx of like 1,000 emails, right? And with something like ChatGPT, I think people just think of it as. Do you remember Ask Jeeves, Matt?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think people are confusing it with Ask Jeeves, but this thing can code. This thing can write you a story. Eventually, it'll be so advanced, and they are having premium subscriptions now. And so in time, you'll be able to do things like pitch decks and write out entire pitch decks with graphics and all that stuff. And really, it's like, all right, me as an individual, Matt, I don't know how to do graphics. I don't know how to form a presentation, but with ChatGPT, if I have the idea, right, if I have the vision, I can just type it all out, give some precise detailing, and within a few minutes, with a snap of a finger, boom, and you would not even know that it was from ChatGPT if you know how to use it efficiently, because there there is a way to tell if someone just like copied and paste something and just put it in ChatGPT. It's very very recognizable. But I do believe that this is going to be somewhat of a skill set, right? Like I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, it's not, you're absolutely right. It's not going to replace engineers. No, it's going to make your good engineers that much more efficient. and be able to make them that much more productive. So, you can get the work of 50 uh, out of only 25 engineers or something like that. You can make your existing workforce that much more valuable. That's the promise.
Matt, so I guess we can move on to our next topic. Bitcoin inscriptions and Bitcoin ordinals. I remember a couple of months ago, we were playing with the idea of NFTs on Bitcoin and perhaps even DeFi on Bitcoin. I wanted to know your thoughts on it since you've
Yeah.
been in those spaces and all that stuff. In my opinion, Matt, in my opinion, this can actually set up Bitcoin for the next cycle, in my opinion, right? I think this creates a narrative where you can bring in a whole new influx of users, right? And those quote unquote new users, they're not going to be the cypherpunks from 2010 to 2016, right? They're going to be your everyday users from tech, right? On TikTok, on Instagram, they like their digital collectibles and all that stuff. They like something that's interactive, right? Like I think the new influx of users is going to be very reminiscent, Matt, of you remember Nintendo 64, right? Nintendo 64, the first PlayStation.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I think the next quote unquote market cycle, um, overall, overall, like in tech in general, I think it's going to be very reminiscent of that innovation. It's going to be like, whoa, what is this? I need to tell I need to tell all my friends, and they need to tell their friends, and it's going to be something that's tangible, right? I don't think it's going to be something that you can just send like here's some sats, right? I think it's going to be something that you can interact with. I think it's just a matter of user interface, in my opinion. There has to be some some VC backing to make it look nice and make it look very streamlined.
Well, I'm not. I don't have any NFTs. Um, I'm not a buyer or seller of NFTs, but I will say this: like, I get that if NFTs have a future, it does make sense that uh, there is an attraction with NFTs on the oldest, most trusted, uh, censorship-resistant blockchain, which is Bitcoin. So I mean, the old thesis of like if it's worth it, it'll eventually come to Bitcoin. Well, I guess it happened. It just happened for NFTs. So I guess that part makes sense. Honestly, I think ordinals and inscriptions is bigger than NFTs, though. NFTs is just the first knee jerk thing that everyone is familiar with in the past, and like, oh well, if it has this ability via Taproot, let's put NFTs onto Bitcoin. Okay, fine. That's like day one. Uh, Day two, day three, it gets a little more interesting. I could see where, um, I could see where, uh, let's say, um, let's say your favorite publication, let's just say, I don't know, CoinDesk or Fox News or New York Times or whatever. Maybe they want to have a weekly or daily newsletter on Bitcoin that say people in China or Russia, or imagine a country or a region that doesn't have access to Western media. Imagine all the people in various parts of the world would actually like to know unbiased, unfiltered information that's being reported on outside of their country that the state can't censor or edit or manipulate. That's where it gets really interesting. What if I'm sitting in China and I can read the latest news because I have a subscription to the ordinal lens from Fox News, New York Times, Reuters, whatever, CoinDesk. I have a subscription to their ordinal lens, and I can, using my own Bitcoin node, read their newsletters, read their articles every single day, and the Chinese government won't can't censor it, doesn't know about it because I'm behind a VPN, can't filter it. Like, that's super valuable. Information is valuable. Like, okay, a JPEG that has a 4 megabyte cap or whatever on Bitcoin, I guess that's interesting to some people. It's not my thing, but when you start talking about information, and what could be valuable in the future, um, that's where, like, I mean, let your imagination run wild. So, that's what's very interesting to me. And that's where honestly I think the cypherpunks would get super interested and start experimenting and tinkering because that's their whole thesis. Their whole point is being able to share money and information freely and openly in an uncensored, decentralized manner across the globe. And surprise, surprise, it turns out Bitcoin has a way of doing that too via Taproot. Like, okay, I'm in.
Matt, do you think something like so I know Jack Dorsey wanted to do this, but try to build like a social application on top of Bitcoin, sort of like this omni-chain smart contract hybrid on top of it, right? I know Nostr. I still haven't gotten my head around it, you know. And an
So you
example that I
should
can
you
give,
should you should download it now, like the easy apps and Google and App
an,
Store in the Apple Store now.
an
You
example that
should
I
just
can
check it
give,
out.
it I will I will then. An example that I can give right now, why I'm asking is like right now Twitter Spaces are down. Like I'm here on my front page, and when I go to the for you, it says tweets aren't loading right now, and a bunch of spaces just close at the same time, right? So when you have something like that, like, what if all your Twitter information just goes kaput, right? And you're an avid enjoyer of spaces. How would that look like? How would that look like on top of Bitcoin, right? And how would users be able to access it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where it gets tricky because to do that right, I think you have to talk about a layer two or layer three, um, because that you're talking about. I mean, because if you're literally just talking about um, uh, subscribe to my ordinal inscription lens, and now you can read my newsletter on the Bitcoin blockchain. Well, then you're not too worried if it's every 10 minutes, and you don't really care if it's text form or you know what I mean. Like the 4 megabyte uh, cap doesn't really affect you. Information can be extremely uh, size energy efficient sent that manner. But if you're talking like what we're used to, the fully featured multimedia experience of Twitter and Spaces and stuff, you're still going to have to keep the vast majority of that off of Bitcoin's time chain. It's still going to be layer two and layer three solutions. You're still going to be relying on central entities and corporations and private companies that can get bought and sold and traded, and management can can be derelict of duty, and the service can get better or worse. So yeah, I'm worried about um, yeah, I'm worried about uh, thinking that it solves everything. It does. Bitcoin does what it does extremely well, but we want to be careful of like, oh well, then if we cram everything into Bitcoin, somehow it makes it better.
Yeah, I agree. Some things are better left untouched. I do want to give a heads up in case the space is rugged. Just want to give that heads up, right? I just got like two messages from a few of my friends that Spaces is rugging them, and they're just kicking them out of the space. And when they click the space, it says Spaces ended. So I just want to put that out there that Twitter is massively bugging right now. So yeah,
Yeah, I think
um,
tweets aren't even loading, sadly. So yeah,
yeah,
looks like this whole thing's dying.
yeah, I think eventually something like Twitter would have to be open sourced, in my opinion, right? And
Well, that's
like,
see, hey, see, that's the cool thing. Go, you should use this as a reason to go download Noster because you can. I'm currently using 12 relays, but others I see, they've got 20 or 30 or 50 relays, and so you're not relying on any one provider. Relays can go up and down, but as long as you've got active relays going, Noster keeps going.
Matt, and did you ever think something like Nostr would come to fruition a couple of years ago?
I loved LimeWire back in the day, and Pirate Bay, and those early versions of, I don't know, Web 2.0, decentralized uh, services and websites. Yeah, I thought that would always be the future. I was actually kind of surprised that uh, over time we haven't seen more of those. We've seen less of those, not more. Um, Maybe Noster is the next iteration of that a decade later. But yeah, there's definitely value in um, decentralizing where you're hosting your product or service, and then letting multiple different, you know, entities, people, regions host an instance of your product or service or website. Just for situations like this. Like I can't believe it. Like richest man, quote unquote, at one time, richest man on the planet, and he can't even keep Twitter up. Like, what? What's going on? Really?
Yeah, but that kind of speaks on the previous products, doesn't it? He tried doing that zip cash thing before PayPal. Then there was PayPal. That wasn't really the greatest.
Mm,
And
yeah.
then you have Tesla, where it's like I think it's like one out of every 100 Teslas is like malfunctioning and it'll have problems. Self-driving feature hasn't even been streamlined yet, and there are other competitors in the EV space that that are just more efficient than a Tesla car. And I think possibly the same thing is going to happen with Twitter. Unless they add in something like a super chat function, um, or maybe like the whole content creator thing that he wanted to do, where you would go on somebody's profile. Of course, this would only be exclusive to Twitter Blue, of course. When you click on someone's profile on their media, you would see another section of quote unquote content creation, and you would see things like blogs or videos, something like that. And as you're doing spaces, you can send things to each other like NFTs, or a digital currency of your choice, right? Any stablecoin, BTC, Doge, whatever you want it to be. And I think that would add in another reason, why Twitter would hit another all-time high as far as user participation is concerned. But I think if those things aren't implemented, then it's probably generationally topped. This is probably like the top of Twitter moving forward, unless of course like we go into a raging bull market out of nowhere, right? I think then you would see your if you remember those spaces, Matt, like thousands of people in a Twitter space, right? Like the bare minimum would be like 500 in the Twitter space, and then you would see like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and you would see those things all over during the bull market, right? And I think, I think with these little features added to Twitter, it would be really cool to see.
Yeah. I come from the infrastructure, the engineering infrastructure side of the house, and new features, new products, new services are exciting and important, but uh, not at the detriment, not at the cost of sacrificing your reliability, not at, not at, not what we're experiencing now. Like maybe they do crack the code and figure out, exciting new offerings that's going to attract the next 100 million users into Twitter. But if you can't even scroll right now and get the latest tweets, you can't even join a space right now. Like, boy, it's every time that happens, you lose so much your uh, of your customers and their trust and and quite frankly their patience into the future. So there's a balance, and I feel like it's kind of veered a little too far into the experimentation side, and you're lost your consistency.
You just gotta let the data dictate, Matt. We need to let.
Right.
We gotta wait for the Twitter CPI, bro. You know, we gotta wait if month over month. We gotta pay attention
Yeah,
to month over month, dude.
right.
You know.
Yeah, compare me month over to month, quarter after quarter, not week after week.
Yeah,
Ugh.
man. Yeah.
So yeah, so yeah, as we leave the winter here, hopefully, and enter the spring, what are you looking forward to? What's on your radar, or Bitcoin or otherwise?
Well, yeah. So, as you know, I like to play easy mode. I don't like to be in front of my screen, play the grind, draw lines or any of that stuff. I just look for extreme disparity, right? So like yesterday, right? This is like a clear example of how left curve I am most of the time. There's this airdrop, right, called Blur, and all you really had to do was like be active on the platform and also do some volume on OpenSea. So of course during the bull market, like of course I was on OpenSea and all that stuff. You claim the airdrop, but Matt, within like 2 hours, over 80% of the individuals had sold off. Right, they sold off their entire stack. And when it was getting listed on exchanges, it was like $5, and then immediately it would just go. It just went to 60 cents, and it stayed there. And I'm like, where have I seen this before? The Uniswap airdrop, right? It got listed at like $11, and then it just went straight to two. Um, and I remember during that time, the Uni token was getting listed across almost every single exchange within the next 4 days going into that weekend. And it went from $2 to $10. And then I'm like, all right, where have I seen this example more recently? And I thought ApeCoin, right? They're both airdrops.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah, yeah,
ApeCoin. That's
they were both airdrops. They both had like, because when a token gets listed on an exchange, it usually has that huge fake out within the first minute, and then it has like a hard reset wherever that floor is, right? And yeah, like I'm like, all right, let me just like wait a bit, and it was just doing nothing at 60 cents. And then like a buddy of mine was like, dude, this is just like Ape. Remember Ape, and like yeah, I'm just like, all right, let's see what happens, because they're doing other things in the background, like they want to do a dex, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, cool, they want to be like a looks rare sort of thing, right? So they might actually produce revenue and all that stuff. Their exchange just might make money, right? Some people say, oh, crypto doesn't do anything. Well, you have decentralized exchanges. They produce money, right? They earn money on fees, right? So, with that being said, I'm like, all right, let me put a few shekels in there and just kick back and relax. And yeah, like it's very low float, and like most of the circulating supply was already sold onto the open market. So it's like there's really no major overhead supply and no extreme unlocks incoming or anything like that. And it has the fresh chart, and there's a narrative, right, with NFTs, Web3, and a lot of some innovation stuff going on. There's this platform called Shibuya, and it's basically like this decentralized NFT platform, right? Storytelling, all that stuff. I've mentioned it here a few times, but I don't want to like come across as a shill. But the creators, rather the founders of Shibuya, they actually made you know the band Linkin Park, Matt?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Well, their music video "Lost" was actually created by the founder Emily Yang, right? And she's done some good, cool
Cool.
stuff in Hollywood before. Like she did a lot of the promo work for DC's Batman versus Superman, and that was some pretty cool work. She did a lot of their graphics and animations. So, with that being said, you know that video went extremely viral. Like you're talking like tens of millions of views there. So you know, left curve, and you just go for it. But you know, if you last week, I was just mostly flat in some longer hold stuff in cold storage where I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna wait until mid Q2 and just do nothing unless a left curve play comes my way, right? Like it's good to take a break, but I still enjoy having somewhat of a pulse in the market, right? So the market's always going to find a way to bring you back, always.
That's for sure.
Just when you want to take a break, dude, right at that moment where you want to take a break, there's always something that pops up. And it's like, all right, I gotta dive in. I gotta dive in. I gotta dive into this, right? And so, but ultimately, like overall this year, I'm still gonna stick to my guns. I don't care what happens in the middle. I don't care what happens in Q2, Q3. I still believe that end of the year, we're probably gonna close upwards of 30K. At a bare minimum, like 27, 28K, right? So kind of like 2015, right, where the yearly open and yearly close was almost 100%. I kind of think that we'll capture at least three three like three halves of that move, so potentially 26, 27K. Because right now, like the production of one BTC overall is about like 18,000 to break even. So if I just do some simple math, um, I think we're gonna be like by 36K, 38K, 39K by the next halving. So why am I gonna stress now, dude? The time to stress was last
Yeah.
year. The time to stress was last year, and like I'm still a buyer of big pullbacks. And by big pullbacks, dude, like I don't mean 10%. I mean like 25, 30%, right? Um, but BTC hasn't really given that, Matt. Ever since the June capitulation, BTC really did nothing but grind up towards August, grind low towards the lows at 18K, 19K, and then have a very small 15%, close to 20% correction on the day of FTX. And that's it. And that's it. It wasn't anything
Yeah.
crazy. So, in retrospect, dude, when you look at 2022, it's like it wasn't that bad. You can summarize it in less than a minute. Yearly breakdown, right? Yearly breakdown when we hit 32K in January. We had that run to 49K in March. Then it was down only. It's pretty much down only for BTC for about 2.5 months, right? It would break down, have a 10% pump, crab, back down, and then more down. um, so Bears really only had that crazy momentum from like early April to mid June. As far as Bitcoin is concerned, right? Altcoins are a different story, depending on what sector you're looking at, right? And we grinded up to August, and yeah, you already know what happens after that. So nothing too crazy in my opinion. And yeah, with that being said, man, I see we're closing in on the hour, and you said you wanted a hard stop at 3 o'clock. So I want to thank you, Matt, for coming on board. Twitter Spaces is probably going to be like still laggy for the rest of the day. Like I'm trying to
Yeah.
build
Yeah,
up the
we'll
profile.
have to do it again. I have a lot of DMs from people that said, "Hey, I couldn't join your link."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
Same,
this was
same here.
but hey, I appreciate this was a lot of fun. And I mean, hey, it looks like Bitcoin's off the mat and getting exciting. And I love to talk Bitcoin and markets and shoot the shit with you. So this
Yeah,
was great.
it was
We
cool,
got to
man.
do it again, Wabi.
Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, we'll probably have it. Let's do like late March for our next space, man. Kind of like end of Q1 round table sort of thing. Spaces also acted up a couple of days ago. Like the actual invite link, right when you click set as a reminder, wasn't even working. So yeah. But anyways, as long as the job still gets done, that's what matters, and we talk some good shop. So yeah, man, thanks for coming on. Spaces replay will be up on our YouTube in like 5, 10, 15 minutes. If you guys want to catch that replay, and yeah, if you're new to these spaces, feel free to follow us here at Because Bitcoin. We'll have market talk in just a little over an hour, and I'll be back tomorrow, probably during the evenings, and go back to that schedule. So, all right, guys, later. Take care. God bless you all. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone who tuned in. Peace.
The trading current is just math. It's just math. It has a 95.45% hit rate when we deviate outside of CP2 and CN2. All you had to do is recognize that 95% of the time when we get over here, under this blue line, we get some sort of mean reversion. So let's just assume you long right here. 95 out of 100 times, when I buy this, I'm gonna get some sort of bounce. It's just math. Look what would have happened as we move up. Look at the bounce that came after. And now look where we are. If you had just blindly followed the current, you take all emotions out of it, and you say, I'm going to trust the statisticians, you would have bought Dow Jones somewhere down here under 30,000. You know, depending on how you want to measure it from absolute top to bottom, 20% move. We also have multi-time frame alerts. You don't even have to be at your computer on TradingView. You can ping your phone. Now, the current has some really awesome features, and I would urge you guys to join our Discord to get access to it. We give it away for free as a tool to the community. It's just math. There's really no need to overcomplicate things, not even in the slightest.